Grand Rising, y'all. Actually, it's too late for a Grand Rising. Good afternoon. So, remember what I was telling y'all about when I was showing, like the Ed Pearson breakdown of the North, and the South, and how there's no more law and order in the North. You see what I'm saying? But more prejudice in the North than in the South. How my dad was breaking that down. Well, the same thing applies. Remember those stories I was telling y'all about the left and the right bird. Small businesses they might be more conservative, right? But going into big corp where there's supposed to be more ethics and more law and order. But there's actually much more subversion. One of the places that I was at before, it was a small business. Tons and tons of calls, help desk, just to get me by, right? A little less so-called rules, but less subversion to a certain extent. You see what I'm saying? Not a whole bunch of just rules and laws and order. There was a lot of things that were real janky, not a lot of standard processes on a smaller business, right? But now you get into this big web, is what I called before. I was talking about the lion's den. And I said, when you step back into those big corporate arenas from being remote, there's a lot of politics involved. It's a lot of politics, and it's a lot of stuff that people say that's going to happen that don't happen. There's reorganization in structures. There's organization. Sometimes when things get restructured around, you might have management moving around and things of that nature. Now, there was a situation where I was coming in to keep mom a contractor. I was supposed to be working hybrid. So now I was sold on the idea of this is hybrid. That was the agreement we had. Now it shifts to something else. Cool. So then it becomes, well, this is supposed to happen and that's supposed to happen. And I'll break it down later on like a podcast or whatever. So I'm like, okay, well, this should have been presented right off the bat for number one. But number two, my understanding was this is what's getting done. You see what I'm saying? So that's not the case anymore. So now I'm like, all right, cool. So I pivot. I'm going to say, all right, give me what I need. And I don't need updates every 5 minutes. Just give me what I need and let me do what I do. So what you have to do in these situations is you need to ask for clarity. If you're somewhere and you're working, this is for brothers and sisters out, if you're somewhere and you're working somewhere and there starts being shifts and changes to agreements, and see, that's the thing about when you're contracting, they could just kind of throw any old little thing in there a lot of times. That's why they don't have an exhaustive set of duties. What they'll do is they'll say, well, this is what the scope is, but they might modify and change the scope at any given time. And then what they're doing now is they'll judge you on that standard that wasn't part of the agreement. So don't be surprised if you see that, but you need to ask for clarity. Okay, what is the scope of this? Because the scope can just be, hey, I'm Bob and I say so. I'm using the term Bob. I'm Bob and I say so at any given time. So just don't get too much of an emotional standpoint on it. Start thinking strategically on what you want to do. Start thinking strategically on how you want to move forward. If there's other departments where you have a skill set that you feel like that best serves you, consider that option. Okay, what do? I start rubbing elbows. Okay, where I'm at, yeah, it's cool. But what I want to do is I want to start expanding my horizons and expanding my skill set. digging back into my old API support and application support and stuff like that and saying, okay, I could present this to the table in a different pipeline. So what I'm talking about here is healthy negotiations. There was a story one time I was told where a guy blew up out of proportion. And he messed up his bag because he just kind of blew up out of the blue. He blew up and it just all went left. If you negotiate, it might go in your favor. You see what I'm saying? And sometimes that happens to a lot of us where, when things don't go our way, we immediately just get upset and we can start lashing out at all the parties. Those folks is handling business. They could just replace you at the drop of a dime, and then now you're still mad. Start thinking strategically. I had to put my tinfoil hat on, or not my tinfoil hat, I had to put my thinking hat on and say, okay, who do I need to talk to circumvent and get where I need to be? So that's why I say I immediately got into the question mode. Once I'm regaled new information, I start asking a few more questions because I had suspicions. I had some suspicions going on, and I said, where is this coming from? Because I'm meeting my numbers. I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. So what changed? And so, I'm just letting y'all know, you'll find some peace and clarity. You'll find some peace in taking a step back and saying, all right, something's weird just going on. And sometimes, you can find people in these environments where you can talk to. It might be a brother or sister that, did you feel like you could trust to a certain extent or whatever. And you could get, a lot of times you could kind of tell. Sometimes you could tell. Sometimes they'll fool you. Sometimes they'll turn you in. But, a lot of times you could pull someone to the side and say, hey, man, what's going on? And a lot of times they'll let you have lay of the land. I've been in places where I come in and they let me know the lay of the land. Once they identify that they're like us, they'll be like, okay, well, yeah, he's solid. So I could ask him some questions, and they'll let you know, okay, that dude over there, no, you ain't gonna get nothing about him. That dude over there, no, but that guy over there, that's the person you want to talk to. So sometimes you just got to be bold, right? You just got to ask questions, because nobody's going to just willy-nilly just give you the information. And that's what I had to realize too, especially when I was coming up. When I was coming up and I was getting in these corporate environments, a lot of times I would have issues where something would happen and I automatically just go to the negative. Now, it would have been something where somebody was undermining me or subverting me, absolutely. But how I responded is the important part. Sometimes I get shut down and said, okay, I ain't gonna talk to that person no more. But you got to work with them. You got to work with them. You see what I'm saying? So you got to modify your game plan and modify your game so when you communicate, there's an understanding. And the questions, a lot of times, because sometimes when you start asking questions, people ain't even ready for your response. They thought your response was going to be, oh, well, this is a typical. This brother here, he's typical. He's just going to blow up or he's going to do. No, and that's corrective action to me. I may just want the information. I just may want the clarity. That might be something that I just want. You see what I'm saying? So that's something y'all could just keep in mind. Especially when it comes to things like micromanagement and things of that nature. Okay, so now you want this done, and hold them to it, because they'll backtrack, they'll go left and right, they'll just come up with any old I'm Bob and I'm say so. They'll do all that. Hold them to the fire. What specifically? Because when you come to me again and you say something else, I want to say, well, let's revisit that conversation. We're not gonna be vague here. We need to be very specific, and we need to be within scope. A lot of times when you're contracting, they like to go way off scope and like to throw little magical nuggets left and right. No, start asking questions. What is this? What is it extended at? You see, so I'm going to really break it down a lot more once I could get into a space that I want to be, that will be best, where I could give examples. You see what I'm saying? So I'm going to upload this. Y'all take care.